back to the Bringing Dreams and Miracles Together podcast. I'm really excited to bring an incredible guest here, another surrogate who's recently completed her journey. She's going to share everything, kind of ins and outs of her support system, what made her want to become a surrogate, and just tell us about her journey and maybe some advice for some future surrogates. So with that, Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me, Cara.
I'm really excited to get to know you more. I know I've told you before we started the recording that I followed you on social media and engaged with you throughout your journey, and it was just so incredible. But before we get into kind of the actual journey, tell us about yourself and maybe what inspired you to become a surrogate.
I am a mother of three. Currently, my kids are 8, 6, and 4. And after that third one came, me and my husband just said, that's it for our family. And then some time kind of lapsed, and I was like, I kind of miss being pregnant. I liked where our family was, though, as far as how many kids we had. I didn't necessarily want to add to our family, but I just kind of missed the pregnancy aspect. And I was actually scrolling through Facebook one day and saw an ad for surrogacy, and I brought it up to my husband and was like, "Am I completely crazy for thinking about this?" And he's like, no. Like, you enjoyed your pregnancies, you enjoyed it all. So like, why not give it a shot?" So that's kind of when the whole process of hunting for agencies went, trying to find all the ins and outs of, medical and, things like that. And that's kind of when I fell upon Family Source, and I was like, look, I'm just gonna apply and we'll see where it goes. Um, and I very quickly was accepted, and that's kind of where my journey started. And that was back in, I think, November
I
of
love that.
23.
So how long was it from the time you saw the ad to where I mean, as you said you did some homework, you guys did a little research together. That's really important. How long was it before you saw that first thing about surrogacy to when you actually filled an application? Did you kind of do it pretty quick? Did you take time? What was that timeline?
So I would say probably about a month or two. I kind of did research about, I had no idea about any agencies. So I just straight went to Google and I was like, best surrogacy agencies to work with. And I found, Family Source on a couple different lists. I saw other companies on a couple different lists. And just kind of looking at requirements and, what was required for certain agencies. I was like, let's try Family Source. They seem, like I found them on multiple websites about, being top 3, top 5 in, matching, in compensation, in building relationships, like all of the things. So I was like, let's go here and see. So I would say probably a month or two.
That's actually a pretty decent time to just do some education, but still also kind of fast. I like that. So you just jumped right in. So how was it? You said your husband was supportive right away. I mean, he said he agreed that you love pregnancy and this is such a beautiful thing. But how was it when you shared your decision with your family to that you wanted to become a surrogate? And what was that reaction like?
So I think, especially coming from our parents, they were a little skeptical at first, mainly because, our parents were older. They're, from a time where this wasn't a thing. So they definitely
Yes.
had some questions, a little reservation. But once, me and my husband kind of sat down and educated everybody on the process, legal, all of the ins and outs about it, everybody was very supportive and, was like, that's great. It's a great thing to do.
What was one of the biggest misconceptions that maybe friends or family had about surrogacy when you first told them you wanted to do this?
A lot of people thought that I would have a genetic connection to the baby. I think that was a huge thing that they're like, you're gonna have like a baby for somebody else and it's gonna be like attached to you that way. And I think that's where a lot of the hesitation came from. Um, but once, we told them like, nope, this is completely, I'm just basically the incubator, if you will. Like I'm here to grow the baby. Other than that, I have no
Yeah.
connection to it. No genetic connection anyway. And that kind of seemed to ease everybody's mind on that too.
So now you have three children and your children are a little bit older, so not every surrogate's children are of an age where they can explain what's going on. But how did you
Mhm.
tell your children? I've heard the baking cookies analogy if you've used that one, but how did you, and if you don't know that one, I can share it, but how did you explain it to your children?
I actually don't know that analogy. But my youngest was, I think, only about a year and a half at the time that our journey had started. So for her, we didn't really talk to her about it because she was so young. I think our
Okay.
big conversations with our kids started around the time that I was going out for embryo transfer because of the timing. My first embryo transfer ended up not taking, but that was about maybe 8 or 9 months after we had started the whole process. So at that point, my youngest was already two, and my older two were, I think, about 6 and 4 at the time. But we had just kind of told them, like, there's a couple out there that want to have a kid, and unfortunately, they can't. So mommy's gonna go and grow a baby for them, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool." My son actually made a comment. He said, "Oh, good, because I don't want any more babies here." He's the middle child. So he's like, "No more babies, mom." And I told him, I was like, "Well, this baby's gonna go to
I
another
love
mommy and
that.
daddy who really want a kid." And they're like, "Okay, cool. That's good."
I love that. That is so great. And so I think that especially you just kind of outright told him exactly what was going on. The cookie analogy is usually for younger children. Yours were a little bit older, but I've heard surrogates say that, here there's this couple that wants to have a child or individual wants to have a child, and the same situation would be as if they want to bake cookies. They have all the flour and the chocolate chips and all of the ingredients, but their oven's broken. They can't cook in their oven, so they come over and use our oven and bake the cookies. And at the end, we don't keep their cookies; they're their cookies, so the cookies go back home with them. And they kind of use that analogy. There's a much more eloquent way to say it, but they
Yeah.
use that analogy of the same thing. You're essentially baking the cookies, you're growing the baby. But I love that you just kind of outright shared with them and that
Mhm.
they were on board and supportive. So tell me about your
Yeah.
actual journey. How was it along the way when you found out you're pregnant, celebrating with your intended parents? Actually, I want to go back. Let's talk more about how you chose your intended parents. Let's start there.
Okay. Perfect. So we had actually seen a few profiles before we ended up, I don't want to say settling. Settling's not the word I want to use. So before we had
Selecting.
decided that yes, this was going to be our couple that we definitely wanted to work with and definitely move forward with in hopes that they wanted to also work with me. But before we had chose them, we had some things that were almost kind of non-negotiables on what we wanted to work, like as a couple to work with. A couple things that we were definitely looking for was I wanted the parents in the room, plain and simple. Like I felt like that was going to be our biggest connection for them, for me and them, for them and their baby. So that was kind of one of those things that was almost a non-negotiable for me. Um, and then just the amount of communication that they wanted. I really wanted to work with a couple or an individual that wanted as kind of as much communication and to be as involved as if it was their own kid that they were, pregnant with. Um, just because I motherhood and pregnancy is, I mean, it's something that you just can't really explain as far as the feeling and the bond that you get. So for me, I definitely wanted them to be able to experience it as closely as they could. So that's when we found we had gotten our intended parents profile and just reading through their profile. I think I want to say it even brought me to tears if I remember correctly. Like it
Oh,
was one of those that I was reading it and I said, "This is it." And I sent it to my husband and I said, "You need to stop what you're doing and read their profile." And I remember he texted me back. I want to say he was at work at the time. He texted me back and he said, "So when's our match meeting?" um,
I love
and they,
that.
I mean, they were great. They had, their issues getting pregnant along the way for several years. We have an egg donor, um, even so, it was one of those, and I'm like, this is going to be it for us. And luckily, they agreed, and we moved forward.
That's incredible. And how did that match meeting go? You know, surrogates have described it as you select each other and you kind of in this blind date now, getting to know each other. But how did you feel? Did it feel like that or did it feel almost natural for you?
Our match meeting definitely felt very natural. It was almost like we had known them for a while, honestly. Like getting on the Zoom, we're like, it's almost like, oh, hey, how you been? Type conversation that we had with them. And I remember even our, from the beginning, your match specialist and match coordinator tells you like, hey, we're gonna talk separately, and then when we're done, I'll talk to you, I'll talk to the intended parents, and then we'll agree. And my husband slipped up and was like, we want to move on. And I was like, babe, you gotta calm
I love
down.
that. Didn't even wait.
They're like, well, we did too. They're like, we
He
did
was
too.
excited.
So, and they
So it
felt
was
the
decided
exact
in the match
same.
meeting by all parties.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
incredible.
Yes, it was. It was definitely before we both got off, we're like, okay, so can we just move forward now? It was that natural for us.
That's so special. I love that. So now you've selected each other, you're moving in. Tell us about, was there anything in the next few phases of medical screening or legal clearance that maybe you were surprised by or either positive or more challenging than you thought that you'd like to share?
So, um, not necessarily. The next kind of phase actually went by pretty fast for us. I know they always say the surrogacy journey is like a hurry up and wait. Um, but it seemed like medical clearance, I mean, within the next couple of weeks, I want to say we matched the day before Thanksgiving, and I went out to their fertility clinic like the first week of January, right after the holidays, for medical
Wow.
clearance. Yeah, it happened fast. And then even going that same route, we had legal, I think, done by end of March, beginning of April, and I had an embryo transfer like the beginning of June already. So I mean, just within a couple of months, it kind of seemed to fly by. We did hit some bumps in the road,
Yeah.
especially with my first embryo not taking. So we hit a few bumps at that point. But up up to my first embryo transfer, it was like smooth sailing, honestly.
So I love hearing that. It's, and each journey is different. So what smooth sailing and time is for one may not be for another. But I love that, it felt just like everything was flowing for the journey for you. So you mentioned your first embryo transfer didn't stick. What was that like? And then tell me about your actual journey, finding out the heartbeat and all of that as I originally asked before went back to the match time.
So, I had actually gone with their clinic. They wanted me to do a mock cycle first before we did our actual embryo transfer. And mock cycle was great. Everything came back normal that they were testing for. But then just that first embryo just unfortunately didn't stick. I had like one or two positive home pregnancy tests, but then by the time the beta testing came along, the numbers just weren't there. And it was definitely one of those conversations that I went to my case coordinator for because it was one of those I'm like, I love my parents. I don't want to be the one to be like giving them this devastating news when, both of us had really high hopes going into it, which I know you're not supposed to get your hopes up. This is a very, all like scientific and, numbers game, really. Um, but it was one of those I'm like, I don't know how to tell them that this embryo did not stick and we don't have a baby yet. So luckily my case coordinator was good and
Yeah.
she took over kind of like that difficult conversation for me. But then it was still very natural with my intended mom after that because most of my conversations and most of my communication was with my intended mom. And I mean, she was like, look, it happens. It's okay. We're going to figure it out. We'll try again. We'll see what our, doctor thinks, and move forward.
Mhm.
She's like, let's just move forward. Let's put it past,
Look at her
start
being
clean.
the
And I'm like,
supportive
let's
one.
do
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah, so it was wonderful. So the clinic had actually done a lot of blood work after that, just to make sure that there wasn't anything underlying that maybe
Okay.
they hadn't found yet. And then there was a conversation about doing a double embryo transfer the next time because the intended parents had only had two embryos left from that batch. Um,
Okay.
and then just from more conversation, they decided instead that they were going to find a new egg donor and get a new set of embryos made. So which took a good bit of time. So we had almost an entire year between my failed transfer and my successful transfer. Just between blood test results coming back and trying to get embryos created, finding them a new egg donor, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they honestly, they did not come to the first embryo transfer. They had had so many like heartbreaks already. They're like, we're honestly going to be on vacation when you go, but we're going to zoom in, like we're going to FaceTime you during it. But she's like, I think it will help like my anxiety and your anxiety if we just kind of stay separated for now. And I was like, that's totally fine. Like that is 100% your call. But then when
Yeah.
our second set of embryos were ready and we were ready to go, they're like, I think we're going to come out and do our embryo transfer with you. Because they're basically from Chicago. And then their clinic was in Los Angeles. So they're like, I think we're going to fly out and we're going to do this with you this time. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's start from day one. We're going to, manifest this baby into existence this go around. So they were there, very supportive. They were both in the room during embryo transfer. And I mean, they were just super supportive. They're like, go rest your feet, like rest, lay down, do everything that the doctor had asked. Like, we're going to get this baby this time. So I had started home testing when I flew back home about 4 days post transfer, which is a little early, but I'm very impatient. So I didn't get one until
That 2 week wait is a
about,
killer.
oh, it's awful. It is awful. It's one of those like, okay, like, come on, time. So I want to say my first positive test came like the night of like day 5. And it was really faint. And I'm like, ooh, maybe. I was like, but I'm not going to count my chickens before they're hatched. So I actually woke up on day 6 and I tested and it was like a digital, like clear as day pregnant. And I was like, it was almost like a weight had lifted, but I didn't want to get too excited yet because it was only
Yeah.
day 6. I was like, okay, but at this point, we're a little step further than where we were last time. And so like I had tested, twice a day, multiple days up to that, day, I think it was 11 and 13, were my beta tests. Um, and it was constant positives. I'm like, okay, well, this is better because the last time I only had like one positive test and then nothing else after that. I'm like, okay, this makes me feel a little bit better that we're getting all of these positives. And then
Hmm.
beta test day came and I, texted my intended mom and I'm like, I'm going to the hospital for my blood test. And she's like, can't wait, can't wait. And she was also excited, but they had not known that I was home testing because they didn't want to know. They're like, just let us know when you get
Oh,
your
okay.
beta
So
test.
they don't know what you know. This is going to be the day they're going
Mm,
to find out,
yes.
possibly.
They were like, if you home test, that's totally fine. We just don't want to know yet. And I'm like, that's understandable. I get it. Um, so beta test day came and I went and all of a sudden the results came in my patient portal and I looked and I was like, oh, that's a high number. I want to say it was 8 or 900 maybe. It was high and I was like, that's
Wow.
a good number. And all of a sudden I was like, I texted her and like with anticipation, I was like, so results are in, dot, dot, dot. And I kind of let it linger. She's like, what is it? And then I just screenshot it to her and she was like overjoyed. She's like, okay, I can breathe a little sigh of relief now, but let's wait till day 2. Like, let's make sure. And then day 2 came and same thing. I was like, I'm going to get my test. And as soon as those results hit patient portal, I texted her and she was just like, relief. She's like, okay, there's the baby there. We've got one. We've got an embryo that's stuck, but that's not the end of it because you still have to get through the first trimester, and then you've got the 20-week ultrasound to make sure genetics looks good, um, and whatnot. So it was definitely a very joyous time. Going to that and even heartbeat. I ended up FaceTiming mom during the heartbeat confirmation. She was very ecstatic about it. And I ended up going to my OBGYN for that just because locally I don't have a clinic that does the ultrasounds
Okay.
like that. So my OB took me and so from the get-go my OB was with me during the whole thing and she was excited for us. And we had a little hiccup. I ended up having like a hematoma that they found and I'm like, well, we need to watch it. And of course, my attendant mom was like, Dr. Google looking it up. She's like, I'm trying not to get stressed out. We're just gonna ease and um it was getting through that first trimester was a little nerve-wracking for the both of us, her and me, because I'm like, we're almost there. Let's just make it to the second trimester, and then we can breathe a little bit more sigh of relief, which was great. And what kind of funny about it was intended dad didn't even like tell his family that there was a baby coming until I was probably 30-ish weeks pregnant.
Oh,
Like
wow.
they had no idea. He's like, my mom kind of, gets a little amped up and stuff, so we're just gonna kind of wait to tell her. And I'm like, hey,
So they didn't
whatever
do a
you guys
gender
need,
reveal or any of that stuff
nothing,
earlier on? They
nothing.
just decided to wait and announce it. Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah,
exciting, but I bet you the family was like, "How could you not tell us?"
they understood, honestly, just because of their previous
The loss. Yeah.
journey and losses and stuff. They're like, we get it, we understand. But I could not keep a
Yeah.
secret that long. There was
I
no
bet
way I'd be able
not.
to
I
keep a
bet
secret
not.
for that long.
I don't think I would be able to either. I can understand that. So, I mean, how
Yeah.
exciting is that? How has your relationship with your intended parents evolved throughout the journey and really, since baby came? And I will talk about your delivery in a minute, but I'm really curious to know because you started out feeling so natural. How did it grow over time and what's it like today?
So it really grew to a really good friendship, honestly. I mean, me and intended mom, we would text multiple times a week. I'd, get videos of my belly moving and send them to her. I even I want to say I was about 12 or 13 weeks pregnant. We have an ultrasound place local. It's called the Baby Theater, and they do, 3D ultrasounds, 4D ultrasounds. They do heartbeat confirmations, gender reveals, all that kind of stuff. So around like the 12 or 13 week mark, I went and got a heartbeat bear made for them. So like they'll have a bear with baby boy's heartbeat in it forever. And it was a surprise. I didn't tell them I was
Oh,
going.
I
I
love
just was
that.
like, "Hey, there's a package coming your way." And I mean, they were ecstatic. They were like overjoyed about that. Um, and it got, just bigger relationships. So they came in at the 20-week ultrasound. We went out to dinner afterwards. And then we had another ultrasound, I think around 28-week mark, just because we couldn't see baby's spine in the first one. So they wanted to do a follow up. And I mean, they came to our house for dinner. They met our kids. They played with our kids, like while we cooked dinner and just kind of hung out for a little while. And it just, at that point, it almost felt like family, just because we had gotten so close from, talking all the time. I mean, this is a huge relationship builder, in my opinion, like growing their child.
Yeah,
So I feel like it's very
absolutely.
natural for us to have that kind of relationship moving forward.
Tell me about your delivery story. How did it go? Was it a quick delivery? Was it long? Did parents make it in time? Tell me about your delivery story.
So delivery was interesting. I'll start with that. So intended
Okay.
parents had planned to be down around the 35, 36 week mark, just because all of my other babies I was induced with, because my blood pressure had started to kind of elevate towards the end. So I had went ahead and been induced with all of my babies. So they're like, okay, well, we'll kind of come down kind of early, just in case. So we had gone into the 30, I think it was my 37-week appointment, and my blood pressure was a little elevated. It was like right at the 140/90 mark. And so my OB was like, well, go home, monitor it, watch it. If you have any other symptoms, or obviously if it gets worse, like please call us, come in, you know, that all of that. And my intended parents were actually staying in Atlanta at the time, and I'm about an hour and a half south of there. So after that appointment, they went back to the hotel because their Airbnb, like in our town, was not supposed to be ready for several days, and almost like a week later. Um, and so I got up the next morning and my blood pressure was still elevated. And I called my OB and I'm like, hey, my blood pressure is still at like the 140/90 mark. They're like, okay, well, why don't you come in? I think we're probably just going to go ahead and induce. So I texted mom and I was like, I think it's going to be baby day. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm trying not to freak out. Let me hurry up and pack this hotel room so we can drive down there. Like, wait, don't do anything until we get there. Like, do not have this baby yet. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So we went to the OB and they're like, yeah. we're going to send you over to the hospital and just, some other testing done just to make sure. I'm like, okay. So they had met me at the hospital, and we, got hooked up to the monitor. Everything looked good. Everything else looked good as far as like there was no preeclampsia. There was no sign of anything like that. It was just that BP that kind of wanted to stay in the kind of like that weird mark.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, well, you're already 37 weeks. They're like, we're just going to keep you because we'd rather be safe than sorry. I don't want to send you home and all of a sudden it spike and, become way worse. So they kept me, and intended parents stayed in my room the whole time. They're like, we're not going anywhere. What do you need? We will be here for you because this is it at this point.
Yeah.
Um, so, they hung out with me in my room, stayed in my room with me. I stayed overnight. They started, I think it was Cytotech that like midnight, to start the induction process. And I think it was about 7 a.m. They came in and they're like, all right, well, we're gonna, check you. And they're like, I think it's about time we start Pitocin. And I'm trying to call my husband because he wasn't there. He was at home with my kids at the time. Because I'm like, nothing's going on tonight. Like, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen. They still have to do the ripening
Yeah.
age. It's like, it's going to be some time. So I'm calling him at
Yeah.
7 a.m. and I'm like, you have to find childcare now. So he's like trying to come up with childcare because my mom ended up getting sick that night and into that morning. She's like, I'm not going to be able to watch the kids. Like, I'm sick. So we're trying to like scramble. We're like, okay, next your sister and your parents, and we're trying to figure out where the kids are going to go. And I'm like, I mean, if it's fine, if you can't get here, like, it's totally fine. He's like, no, you're giving birth. I will be there. We'll figure it out. So he literally like got to the hospital in time that they broke my water, like 30, 45 minutes later. And
Wow.
I think by the time from water break to birth, it was maybe 3 hours, 3.5 hours at most. And it
Wow.
progressed very, very quickly. And then all of a sudden, I hear the doctor yell shoulder, and next thing I know, I've got a nurse on top of me, like WWE body slamming elbow into my uterus because little boy's shoulder got stuck and had a shoulder dystocia. So I'm like, this is not fun.
Oh,
Yeah, it's freaking
oh
out mom
wow.
and dad. I'm yelling in pain. They're trying to get baby boy unstuck. My husband's like, oh God, what is happening? And it was luckily baby boy finally came. He did ended up breaking his collarbone, but since healed perfectly, no other issues. Um, it definitely freaked out mom and dad. And I
I
mean,
bet.
baby boy's doing great. So,
That's incredible. How were you doing after that delivery? That's a little more intense than you were used to. So how
oh,
did
for
you,
sure.
take time to heal and take care of yourself?
So I mean, recovery was honestly not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Um, it as far but just besides the shoulder dystocia, delivery was fairly easy. I felt like this recovery was almost even faster than my other ones, believe it or not, even though baby was almost nine
Wow.
pounds compared to my 7 pound babies. He was
And
eight
you're a
pounds,
tiny
13
person, so that is
ounces.
a big baby for you.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but it wasn't bad. My husband, was able to take a couple days off of work. His job was very understanding. He's a firefighter, so everybody at work is like, take the time off, you know, help Lauren with the kids, let her, relax and recover as much as she can. Um, so it wasn't bad, and luckily it. So I gave birth on New Year's Eve, and my kids went back to school a few days later. So I think that kind of helped the process a little bit too, because I didn't have, my kids around me 24/7. They were back at school, kind of gave me a
Yeah.
little bit extra time to, hey, if I just need to come home and lay down while, my husband's at work and while my kids are at school, I have the time to do that.
It's really important. So tell me what it was like, Lauren, in that moment in the delivery room. Obviously, baby's collarbone is broken, but seeing the intended parents hold their baby for the first time and knowing you helped make this happen, what was that like for you and your husband?
It was magical. So, right when baby was born, he didn't cry immediately. So it kind of spooked the parents a little bit. And some of it I honestly don't remember right as happening because I went unmedicated through my birth. The only thing that I had was some IV pain meds towards the end, but it was like fully unmedicated. So it was almost one of those like trauma shock from the pain right after birth, also.
Yeah.
But my husband is very diligent about cameras. So he was able to even record the intended parents' reaction for them. And, he's like, hey, we finally got baby to cry. That's a good thing. That's a really strong cry. Like, and I mean, they're in tears, they're in awe. And I'm like, almost like a sigh of relief. Like, we did this. We did it. They finally got the gift that they
Yeah.
had been, hoping and praying for 5 years. And we're there. And I mean, even intended parents, family, my intended mom's mom was also there. She came to visit in the delivery room before we had him. She's like, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" So I mean, even their family was very supportive about this whole journey, also. And I mean, just the looks on their faces. And I even go back and watch the videos from time to time about how they are when they first see him and when they finally get to hold him. Like mom ended up doing skin to skin afterwards. So it still brings tears to my eyes when I go back and see some of those videos of them.
That is so special. Lauren, what is your relationship with the parents now? Do you get updates on little baby boy? How has this evolved since birth?
Yeah, so I had actually pumped for baby boy for about 6 months. I'm now done pumping and shipping milk for him. But I mean, the communication stayed weekly, just because there was kind of like there was a reason to keep it, but also like it was like, hey, I'm pumping. How's baby boy doing on the milk? Do I need to change a little bit of my diet? Is there something, different that we need to change for him? And so, I mean, we continued to communicate, weeks on end. And she sent me, you know, multiple updates with pictures. And I mean, it's still, I haven't talked to them probably in about maybe 2 weeks. But I know they're just overjoyed and they're still getting used to parenthood. And so I don't take it personal. I know how it is. I know, having a newborn, I know the attention that it
Yeah.
demands. So, but I mean, I think the relationship will always stay there, even if it's a once every couple months check in, like, hey, been thinking about you guys. How's baby doing? How are
A
you guys
forever
doing? Is
connection.
everything
That's
going?
beautiful.
Yes, yes. Because I mean, from this point on, there's always going to be adjusting when it comes to parenthood. I mean, I had brought it up to the intended mom the other day. We were talking, or a couple weeks ago, I think it was. She had said that he was, a little extra fussy, and I'm like, well, I mean, he's getting 6 months now. Is he teething yet? She's like, oh, maybe. So I think it's still like that kind of like mom helping mom now at this point. Like, hey, try
I
this,
love
maybe
that,
this.
using your
So
experiences to help her as she's adjusting to motherhood.
yeah. And I mean, like they have nieces and nephews. They're like their nieces and nephews are older, but I think it's different when you're the actual like when you're the parent. It's your baby. And because I
Yes.
mean, my husband was the same way. I mean, he's got older nieces and nephews. He was an uncle before he became a dad. And when he became a dad, he's like, all my knowledge is out the window. I know nothing. He's like, I'm starting from scratch. I don't know anything about babies. Kind of feed off each other like, hey, why don't we, try this? Or maybe, this might be an issue. I think, babies have a sleep regression around this age. So it's definitely been a great like relationship builder also through the next stages of parenthood.
That just seems so beautiful. Lauren, when you look back on this experience years from now, what do you think you and your husband will remember the most?
Um, Probably just their like our relationship with them and just the birthing itself. Just I mean, I literally gave someone like the greatest gift that somebody could ask for. So I think that's probably our like
Yes.
number one thing of what we're going to remember the most out of this is just how much our relationship built and grew from day one, growing all the way to here's a baby.
And you never know what that baby's going to do in their lifetime. Think about when they become an adult and what change they could make in this world. And you helped make that happen by helping bring them into the world. That is so
Mhm.
special. So, I could sit here and talk to you all day long. I just love listening to you and you're sharing your story. And I want to ask one final question, take as long as you want to answer it. But what would you say to a woman who's been thinking about becoming a surrogate, but isn't sure it's the right decision for her, or just someone who's not even thought about it? What you would say to possibly have them look into it?
So that one's a little tough one. So I think
Okay.
overall, I think it has to do with where your mindset is at the time, and kind of what you think or expect out of the process, because it can be completely different. Um, like I said from the beginning, our family always thought I had a connection to the baby. So it's one of those, is this somebody that's a potential surrogate thinking, okay, am I going to have a connection to this baby? Because I don't know if I want that. Um, I think research, I think support groups, finding, other women that have been surrogates to talk to them about the kind of backlot experience of it, I guess. Just things that you don't see out in the open. Anytime I scroll on Facebook, I always see ads. You can make this amount of money being a surrogate. And I'm like, okay, but that's not what it is. Like every time I see an ad, it's about the money aspect, and it's not. It's not about the money at all. So I think that's one thing that people definitely need to think about. Like if you're just doing this for the money, it's not going to be for you, because there is a whole different mental aspect to this than that. So I think really you've got to mentally prepare yourself to, hey, yes, I'm growing a human being, um, which clearly you've done in the past, because I mean, to be a surrogate, you have to, have your own big kids, but it's this baby does not come home with you. Are you mentally okay with that? And see, for me, I was, because I knew that I was done growing my family and I was ready to now help somebody else grow theirs. Um, so I just think the whole process in general is a huge learning curve. I think, from the start, there were other things that I didn't necessarily know going into it that I kind of learned along the way. The support system is one thing. I did not realize how much of a support system that I would have. Just not talking about a family, I'm just talking about the agency in general. I mean, there's a whole group of people that are like, hey, what you need? We got you. We can help you. We can find you, the
Yes.
answers, the resources, whatever you need to help in whatever, you know, um, mind fog, brain fog, whatever you've got going at the time. But I think overall, if somebody's thinking about it, I think they need to look at the whole picture overall. What are you wanting to get out of a surrogacy? What do you want to give in your surrogacy? If somebody's like, hey, I wouldn't mind being pregnant again, let's chat. I mean, I love to put it out there all the time to people. Like, I've got people who message me on Facebook and they're like, hey, what does all this really entail? And, I give them the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm like, hey, this could happen, this could happen. You've got medications you're taking, you have, legal contracts you have to think about. It's not your baby. You got to think about everything. You have to think about how this affects
Hmm.
intended mom and dad, or just intended mom, just intended dad, with, the things that you do in your life. Because I mean, there's some things that I changed, like I cut back on my caffeine, because again, you have to think about how this affects your lifestyle too, to give this baby to somebody else, because they may have, the intended parents may not like, a lot of caffeine intake, or, uh, you know, they want you to exercise more. They don't want you to exercise more. So you have to think, how flexible are you in your life, to where you would be okay being flexible enough to give this gift to somebody else. And I would say at this point, I'm very flexible. So
I love that. It is a huge commitment what you're putting, obviously, yourself through, your family through. And so I appreciate you sharing that. You touched on the support. We didn't even cover that. Tell me how important that support system was. You obviously had your husband, your family, you've got your case coordinator with us, you have a surrogate support manager, but you also have that incredible peer support group and virtual meetings and everything. So tell me about just how integral all of that was to your journey.
So I think it was very significant, because of the fact, like, yes, I had my family, but there were some things that, they didn't necessarily understand or have answers to, because surrogacy is a whole different ball game. You get pregnant naturally is way different than, being pregnant IVF, implantation surrogacy type thing. So I think having the extra support through the agency and having, those women that have been through what I'm going through right now, and having, the experience that I haven't had yet, they were very open to, hey, this is what happened in my journey. It's okay that this happens in your journey. It's a little bump in the road, but it's okay. We can move on and we can, figure it out, or, whatever the situation is. So I think just overall having those people is just huge in the success of a surrogacy. Between the peers and, the um, case managers, and I mean everybody. It was life changing to have those people to say, hey, I've been in your shoes. This is what you can kind of expect, although no pregnancy is the same. But, just having those other opinions and other experiences to kind of compare to, it was a huge help in my opinion.
I'm so happy to hear that. I know we have the world-class support system, and just knowing, as I'm interviewing surrogates like yourself for this podcast, just hearing how important that is really is super special, because we take great pride in that. And it's really bigger than you have an army behind you with your family, your friends, with us, with everything. And I was speaking with a surrogate yesterday who just said, do you realize how many people it took to bring this one little baby into the world? And when you think about that, it's huge. It's you, it's your husband, it's your family, your support system, the fertility center, attorneys. There's so many moving parts to just, and like you said, giving birth naturally, you just have the baby. It's obviously pregnancy is challenging and you have all of that, but there's so many people that touch this one journey that impact
Yeah,
you at the core of it and your intended parents. And so thank you for sharing that.
of
I,
course.
as we kind of wrap this up, Lauren, I'd love to know, is there anything else at all that you wish I would have asked you or you wanted to share for our listeners, that, just about your journey or looking ahead or anything at all?
Um, I think closing it out, I would just have to say that, like I've said before, it's surrogacy is a huge learning curve. I mean, you could do everything right and it's still not working in your favor. Or, you could do things wrong and it still end up in your favor. Not that I'm saying do things wrong, but you know what I mean. Like, um, I mean, it's just the whole thing is it's a miracle and it's amazing. And I'm actually really glad that I had came upon that ad on Facebook the one day when I was scrolling, because I think it's just changed our lives as a whole. Between my family, other families out there, I think surrogacy is just amazing, and a huge game changer for anybody who's wanting to be a parent. So I don't know. I think overall, I almost have no words just because the experience has been amazing.
You're so right. The fact that we can offer surrogacy to parents in the world and that it's accessible and that people like you who are such good, beautiful humans want to give that gift of parenthood. We live in a wonderful world to be able to do that. And it really does impact so many. So I'm excited. I think you are an incredible human. I love that I got the chance to interview you today. I also loved following along with your journey, so that was special for me. And I'd love to maybe, reconnect with you in the future and just see how things are going after maybe baby turns 1 and what that's like and what that milestone is. We can kind of do an update. Where is Lauren now? And maybe you're on another journey. I'm not sure if you chose to continue on, but we'll definitely reconnect in the future for a future episode.
Absolutely, I would love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I hope everyone really enjoyed today's episode with Lauren. And if you have any other questions that maybe you were hoping that she would answer, go ahead and shoot them over to Family Source, and we will definitely connect with Lauren to answer them in the future.